The boy slept beneath the burned-out bridge like he always did, curled against the cold concrete with a cardboard sheet pulled tight around his ribs, his breath shallow, his dreams restless. He couldn't remember when he'd last felt warm. Maybe warmth was something people invented to talk about when they wanted to forget the way the world really was. His name was Eli, though no one ever asked it anymore. To the city, he was just another shadow that moved when the light changed, another problem everyone stepped around. What made him different, what he kept hidden beneath layers of dirt, scars, and shame, was the tattoo on his left shoulder blade. Old. Faded. Crude. Not something a kid should have. Some nights, when the wind howled just right, he swore it whispered to him, the lines tingling like they were alive, reminding him of things he'd tried to bury deeper than hunger or fear. He didn't remember the pain of getting it, only the voice that had said, "This mark keeps you alive." That morning, the sound of engines shattered the quiet beneath the bridge. Deep. Thunderous. Not the rattling sedans or coughing buses Eli was used to ignoring. These engines growled with intent. He opened one eye and felt his stomach drop. Motorcycles, big ones, rolling in slow formation like predators that knew they owned the street. Black leather. Chrome flashing. Red and white patches stitched like warnings. The words Hell's Angels burned into his vision. Eli's first instinct was to run, but hunger had made him slow, and fear made his limbs heavy. He pressed himself flat against the concrete, praying he'd disappear. The bike stopped. Boots hit the ground. Voices low, confident, dangerous, laughed and cursed as the men dismounted. Eli squeezed his eyes shut, counting his breaths. He'd heard stories on the street. You didn't cross bikers. You didn't look at them. You didn't exist if you were smart. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. A gust of wind ripped his cardboard cover away, exposing his thin frame and the torn shirt clinging to his back. "Hey," a voice called out. "Come. Curious. Kid." Eli froze. Silence stretched like a blade at his throat. "I said, kid," the man repeated, closer now. "You alive?" Eli swallowed and nodded without turning. He expected pain. Kicks. Laughter. Instead, there was a pause, then a soft sound, almost like surprise. "Well, I'll be damned," the biker muttered. A rough hand gently pulled at the back of Eli's shirt. He gasped, panic exploding in his chest. "Easy," the man said quickly. "I ain't gonna hurt you." Too late. The tattoo was exposed. Faded lines forming a symbol most people wouldn't recognize, but the man behind him did. The biker sucked in a sharp breath, like someone who'd just heard a ghost speak their name. "Where did you get this?" the man asked, his voice suddenly tight. Eli shook his head. "I don't know," he whispered. "It's always been there." The biker stepped back as if struck. Another angel leaned in, then another. Their laughter died. Their confidence drained away. "The air changed." "That's impossible," one of them said. "No," the first biker replied slowly. "It's not." Eli felt the tattoo tingle, almost burn, and for the first time since he could remember, the whisper returned, not in his head, but carried on the wind, carried through the silence between hardened men who suddenly looked unsure of themselves. "That mark," the biker said quietly, "belongs to a man who saved my life 30 years ago." Eli turned, finally daring to look at them. Faces like stone. Eyes that had seen war, prison, blood, and loyalty forged in fire. And yet, now, they stared at him like he was the impossible thing. What does it mean?" Eli asked. The biker knelt until they were eye level. "It means," he said, choosing each word carefully, "that you ain't supposed to be on the streets." The men exchanged looks, silent communication built on years of brotherhood. One of them pulled out a phone. Another scanned the bridge, suddenly alert, protective. "A boss," someone said, "if word gets out." "I know," the kneeling biker replied. "That's why it won't." He looked back at Eli. "Kid, you hungry?" Eli nodded before he could stop himself. "Good," the man said, standing. "Because everything in your life is about to change." The engines roared back to life, but this time they didn't sound threatening. They sounded like a promise. As Eli was lifted onto the back of a bike, hand steady, respectful, he felt the tattoo grow warm, like it was finally awake, and somewhere deep inside him, a truth he'd never understood whispered clearly for the first time. The streets had kept him alive, but the Hell's Angels were about to reveal whiteout. If you want to know what happens next, why the tattoo terrified men who feared nothing, and how a forgotten secret rewrote a boy's destiny, subscribe now, because Chapter 2 will leave you stunned. The clubhouse sat on the edge of the city like a fortress built from scars, steel, and stories nobody outside was meant to understand. Eli felt it the moment the bike rolled through the gates, the weight of history pressing down. The kind of place where loyalty mattered more than law and silence was a currency stronger than money. Men stopped what they were doing as the engines cut. Conversations died. Eyes followed the boy as if he were a ghost walking in daylight. Eli's heart pounded so hard he thought everyone could hear it. He wanted to shrink, to disappear again into the cracks of the world, but the biker who'd brought him here, Jack, they called him, rested a steady hand on Eli's shoulder, grounding him. Inside, the walls were lined with photographs, young men turned old, fallen brothers frozen in time, symbols repeated again and again like prayers etched in ink. Jack led Eli into a quieter room and closed the door. The air smelled of oil, leather, and something older. Memory. Jack studied the tattoo again, closer now, his voice lower. He told Eli about a man named Rook, a legend even among angels, a brother who believed that strength meant protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Rook had disappeared decades ago after a job went bad, leaving behind only rumors and a handful of men who owed him their lives. The tattoo, Jack explained, wasn't just ink, it was a marker Rook used on those he saved, a symbol hidden in plain sight so his enemies would never recognize it, but his brothers always would. Eli listened, stunned, as Jack's words filled in the empty spaces of his past. The whispers he'd heard weren't madness. They were echoes. Then the truth hit harder. Rook hadn't just saved Eli, he'd hidden him. Eli was a child pulled from a fire no one officially reported, from a night wiped clean by fear and influence. His parents' names were never written down. The system never knew he existed. Rook had marked him, left him where the world wouldn't look too closely, trusting that one day, if Eli survived long enough, the mark would speak for itself. The room fell silent when Jack finished. Eli's chest ached, not with fear now, but with something dangerous and unfamiliar, belonging. Word spread fast through the clubhouse. Not gossip, confirmation. Old-timers came forward, men with shaking hands and eyes wet with memory. One showed Eli a matching scar beneath his vest. Another told a story about Rook carrying a bleeding stranger miles through the desert without stopping once. The brothers didn't touch Eli much, but when they did, it was careful, reverent. Meals appeared. Clean clothes. A place to sleep that didn't smell like rain and rot. For the first time in his life, Eli slept without one eye open, but the world outside didn't stay quiet. Someone had noticed the bikes under the bridge. Someone had talked. A man from Eli's past, the kind who profited from forgotten children, came looking. He didn't make it through the gate. The angels handled it their way, without noise, without spectacle. Eli never saw violence, only the aftermath, calm faces, a thread erased like chalk from concrete. Jack knelt in front of him afterward. "Nobody takes what's ours," he said. "And you're ours now." Days turned into weeks. Eli learned to read better, to eat slow, to laugh without flinching. The tattoo stopped whispering because it didn't need to anymore. Its secret had been heard. On a quiet evening, Jack took Eli outside and pointed at the road stretching into darkness. "You get a choice," he said. "We don't own you." Rook wouldn't have wanted that. Eli looked back at the clubhouse, the bikes, the men who had given him something the streets never could. He chose to stay, not as a mascot, not as a weapon, but as a promise kept. Years later, people would tell stories about the boy with the old tattoo and how the Hell's Angels shocked everyone by doing the one thing no one expected. They saved him, openly, fiercely, without apology. And every time someone asks how a homeless kid survived long enough for fate to find him, the answer is simple: some secrets are meant to be protected until the right people hear them. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories of fate, brotherhood, and second chances. Your support keeps these stories alive. Time did what the streets never could. It healed without asking permission. Eli grew, not just in height but in presence, his shoulders squaring, his eyes losing that hunted look and gaining something steadier. The clubhouse became a place of lessons rather than refuge alone. He learned discipline before strength, respect before power. The brothers never rushed him. They understood survival had already taught him enough violence. What they gave him instead was structured morning routines, mechanical work, long rides where nobody spoke but everything was said through the road. The tattoo faded further with time, but its meaning only grew heavier. It was no longer a mystery, it was a responsibility. One night, years later, a familiar engine roar echoed outside the gates, different bikes, different colors, wrong intentions. Trouble had come dressed as opportunity. A local crew wanted territory, leverage, a show of dominance. They'd heard whispers about a boy raised by angels, a symbol they could break to send a message. Eli stood in the shadows as the meeting unfolded, heart steady, hands calm. Jack watched him closely. This wasn't about violence, it was about choice. When threats were made, Eli stepped forward, not aggressive, not afraid. He spoke quietly, but the silence that followed was absolute. He showed the tattoo. Not as a challenge, but as truth. Old men on both sides recognized it. Rook's legacy still carried weight. The meeting ended without blood. Power, Eli learned, didn't always roar. Sometimes it simply stood its ground. Later, Jack handed Eli a patched vest, not a full one, not yet, but a symbol of earned trust. "You walk your own road," Jack said. "Just remember where it started." Eli nodded, feeling the weight settle on his shoulders like armor made of memory. He began working with outreach crews. The Angels quietly funded food runs, protection details no cameras ever caught. The same bridges that once swallowed him now echoed with footsteps that brought hope instead of fear. Kids looked at him the way he'd once looked at the bikers, with disbelief and desperate curiosity. He told them the truth: survival is only the beginning. Years passed. The story spread, distorted and exaggerated, but the core remained untouched. A homeless boy. An old tattoo. A brotherhood that chose mercy when the world expected brutality. Eli never corrected the rumors. Legends didn't need polishing. On quiet nights, he sometimes sat alone, fingers tracing the faded ink, thanking a man he barely remembered but would honor forever. The whisper never returned, but its lesson stayed: you are alive for a reason, and that is how the Hell's Angels stunned everyone, not with chaos, not with fear, but with loyalty that outlived blood and time. But if you believe stories like this matter, stories of redemption, brotherhood, and hidden hope, subscribe to the channel now. More powerful stories are coming, and you won't want to miss them.